Hello dear students of class 10th, welcome to biology class. In the last video, we started our discussion with sexual reproduction in flower, in which we discussed that a flower has four parts: sepals, petals, stamen and the carpel, also called the pistil. Let's continue our discussion in today's video with pollination and fertilization. Students, the transfer of pollen grains from anther of the stamen, that is the male reproductive part, to the stigma, the female reproductive part of a flower, is termed as pollination. And the agents of pollination can be varied. It could be wind, water, insects, and also the birds. These agents help in transferring the pollens from the anther to the stigma. Now, pollination can be of two types, students: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Let's see what does they mean. Self-pollination: when the pollen from the stamen of a flower is transferred to the stigma of the same flower. It means self-pollination occurs in a bisexual flower that has both male reproductive part, stamen, and the female reproductive part, that is the carpel or the pistil. So, self-pollination means within the same plant or the same flower, when the pollens are transferred from stamen to the stigma, it is termed as self-pollination. Whereas cross-pollination is pollen grains from the stamen of a flower is transferred to the stigma of a different flower of a different plant. Then such type of pollination is termed as cross-pollination. After the process of pollination, the next process that is initiated is the process of fertilization. Pollination is followed by fertilization in plants, student. What is fertilization? Fertilization is the process of fusion of male germ cell produced by the pollen grain with the female gamete that is present in the ovule. So this fertilization of the male germ cell and the female gamete is termed as fertilization. Now let's see stepwise how this process occurs, student. This is the diagram of the female reproductive part, that is the carpel or the pistil. It has three parts: the stigma, the sticky part, a long tube, that is the style, and a swollen basal part called the ovary. Student, as soon as the pollens are shed on the stigma, from these pollen grains, the pollen tubes start to grow out of the pollen grain. These tubes travel through the style and it finally reaches the ovary. As we can see in this diagram, that from the pollen grains on the stigma starts to arise a tube that is called the pollen tube. This pollen tube gradually travels through the style and ultimately it moves towards the ovary. After this, in the pollen tube, there travels two male nucleus. These male nuclei are also called male gamete. In one pollen tube that arises from a pollen grain travels two male nuclei, also called the male gametes. Now after these male nuclei, they enter the ovary. One of the male gametes fuses with the egg that is present in the ovule. This fusion of one male nucleus and the egg of the ovule results in the formation of zygote, and this process is called syngamy. Now, the second male nucleus, as two male nuclei are traveling, one has fused with the egg cell of the ovule, and the second male nucleus, it fuses with the two polar nuclei. The second male nucleus fuses with the two polar nuclei, and this results in the formation of endosperm. And this process is called triple fusion. Why it is called triple fusion? Because three nuclei has fused. One the main nucleus and two polar nuclei. So 2 plus 1, 3. So that is why this process is called triple fusion. Two processes has happened simultaneously. One is syngamy, the fusion of the one of the main nucleus with the egg, syngamy. The fusion of the second male nucleus with the two polar nuclei is called triple fusion. Now, since simultaneously two fusions have taken place, as the fusion takes place, this overall process is called double fertilization. Now, after the fertilization has happened, the zygote, it will divide many times and it will form the embryo within the ovule. And the embryo is also commonly called the baby plant, that is the future plant. Now, after this embryo formation, slowly the ovule develops a tough coating and gets converted into seed. And the ovary, it rapidly grows, it ripens and is converted into fruit. And all the other floral parts like sepals, petals and the stamen, they slowly shed away. So this is the process of pollination and fertilization in flowering plants. Students, the assignment of the topic that we have discussed today is available on the school website. Answer those questions in your biology notebook, and in the next video we shall start our discussion with sexual reproduction in humans. Thank you very much.